able to maintain that. And even that change to me is quite exciting, although a little frightening at times. Because as I go through and I try my best to get everything right, knowing what I know, which is not nearly enough, I find myself even now going back and changing a word here and updating a word there, and we just did a revision to the book of Jubilees because a time frame was off. It's very, very subtle. Instead of Cain and Abel being born within a particular Jubilee, which is a series of 49 years, they were actually born within a series of weeks within a single Jubilee. And a week in a Jubilee is 7 years. So, and we see this over and over, especially in the older Bibles, like the King James and the Geneva Bible, that there were amazing errors that were caught. You know, there's a book called or a rendition called the Adulterer's Bible, which was put out by a gentleman whom the king actually demanded a lifetime's payment for, a fine, because he had translated one of the commandments, "Thou shalt commit adultery." And we see this over and over and over through the history of the Bible, where things were mistranslated. And one can argue that really wasn't a translation, it was a problem in the printing process, and that is true, but there were errors in translation too. There are things that are left out and things that should not be there, things that were added. Entire denominations built on the end of Mark that says, if you have faith, you'll pick up serpents and you won't be harmed and you'll heal the sick and raise the dead. That doesn't exist in the older witnesses. It doesn't exist at all when you get back to a certain point. It was added by a very zealous monk that wanted a fancy ending.
Wow, this is like losing your innocence to hear some of this.
For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever does not occur in the old witnesses, not in the old translations at all. It ends according to, if you read, for example, the American Standard Version, that's where it ends. The King James Version uses something called the Textus Receptus, because you have to have a way of translating these Bibles. You have to have a body of work in which to translate, from which to translate. And so you gather your books, your Greek and your Hebrew of different books, and you translate them. And that corpus, that core corpus of the Hebrew and Greek from which you're translating is going to be different from another corpus of collection of Hebrew and Greek that somebody else finds that might be a little older, or from a more pure stock, you might say, where a mistake wasn't made.
How have you done all these books and all this research in one lifetime, and your lifetime's not even over? Do you have a team of people that work with you, or is this all you doing it?
It is mostly me. I do have a team that hopefully keeps me straight as far as the editing goes, but the actual research is mine. My wife can tell you I don't sleep much, and I'm OCD.
I understand you're a martial artist, too.
Yes, it keeps me sane. This is my 37th year to study.
Wow. What kind of a martial artist? What area?
It's called Hapkido. It's, for lack of a better phrase, it's a type of Korean jiu-jitsu with punches and kicks.
That must be very centering.
It is, and allows me to blow off steam when I need it, because this gets quite frustrating at times.
Which part?
The turn of the right phrase. So there are different ways of translating. You can do word for word, and by the end of the day, it will not be readable to the normal public. It will not be readable. If you take a language, say Spanish, common modern language, and you translate word for word, your syntax, your sentence structure will be backwards from English. There are different types of languages. They're put into categories. Which comes first? Subject, verb, noun, verb, subject. You know, it's the Yiddish thing. Throw the horse over the fence, some hay. And you have to contend with that. You have to go over it and read it over and over again and try to get your mind around exactly what they're trying to say, because the sentence structure is inverted in most languages compared to English.
I think if I were doing what you're doing, I would need psychiatric help.
Well.
I mean, seriously, the meticulousness with which you have to focus on so many details to make sure everything is being translated and communicated properly, it's huge. Huge.
Well, you have idioms and colloquialisms that we just don't even have here. And I'm Southern, so I get it, you know. Cute as a speckled pup, you know, that kind of thing. Some of them don't even make any sense anymore because it's just so far out there. Words that were created so long ago that you've lost the actual meaning of what they used to be. It's a fascinating field, and we have a kind of production system that we go through. We research and find the text itself, and then we find every single shred that we can find that was written about the book. And let me tell you, some of the authors that were, especially the German authors, and some of these authors that were translating in the late early 1900s are just brilliant beyond belief. And we compare all of their text, and we find that there are differences, sometimes great differences, between how things were rendered. And we make sure that we circle those, and we go back and we pay absolute attention to what the original texts were saying at that time, and we try to make a decision as to who was right, and then how to render that so that the modern reader can easily read it and understand it.
Sounds like the work that you've already done could be put into a software program for people to go in. Almost like you have your own matrix for which one can inquire and look in these ancient texts. Do you know what I'm saying?
And one day I might actually have to write a book or do a software program to allow that. But
yeah, that's a whole other thing. I'll get you in trouble doing that. You'll be on a whole other thing. God help you.
We just signed a contract, by the way, with Ingram to help stock the ever-growing Apple ebook stores. So that's kind of exciting.
Fabulous. I'm an Apple user, so I'm excited.
I am too, and it's really a pleasure to do that. We will have 25 books with Apple within the next 6 months.
Very exciting. Can you say something about calendars? Is there anything about the different calendars that's ever come in during your research?
Absolutely, yes. The Hebrew calendar is a lunar calendar, and it's very, very ancient way of carrying it out. You actually had an 11-day, I believe it is. I have to look it up. You have about 11 days that are a difference, and they cycle. So you'll have these great holy holidays, these holy days that kind of go back into the calendar. And one year you'll do Passover in springtime, but a few years later it might be in the middle of summer or autumn or something. And so Hillel, a great rabbi, decided that he would kind of stabilize that. So he actually ended up making a few changes that allowed the holidays to fall where they needed to be and stay in that situation, so that the holidays had more meaning and were where they were supposed to be during the year.
I didn't know that the calendar was changed by Hillel. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I thought this was all the Hebrew calendar. I had no idea.
Yeah, it was kind of running rampant there at one time, where you had Passover in different times of the year. So it was kind of stabilized and tweaked a little bit. Ours have been stabilized, you might say, changed around. When we went to our calendar around the time of Nostradamus, as a matter of fact, is when the change occurred. We used to celebrate our New Year at the end of March and the beginning of April. And it was a week of celebration as we rung in springtime, and it was a very big deal if you're